From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. Live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. Alongside Kaylee Lines, I'm Joe Matthew.
Trump leads Biden by 4 points in our new Morning Consult Bloomberg swing state poll, which shows half of voters are worried about violence around the election. We'll have full details and analysis with our political panel.
This as Biden meets with Kenyan President William Ruto at the White House alongside major tech executives today. Shirley Martey Hargis, Senior China Policy Fellow of Third Way, discusses the visit with us coming up this hour.
And a long-awaited crypto market structure bill hits the House floor with opposition from the SEC and the White House. We'll discuss the legislation with Kristin Smith, CEO of the Blockchain Association. And we have some breaking news as we come to air this evening. Joe, months after ending her 2024 presidential campaign, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley says she will vote for Donald Trump in this election. She said that she puts her priorities on a president who will have the backs of our allies and hold our enemies to account. She says Donald Trump has not been perfect on these policies, but Biden has been a catastrophe. So she will be voting for Trump.
Very similar refrain that we've heard from the governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, on this very program, right? One is bad, but the other is worse. A soft endorsement, I guess we can call this, urging Donald Trump to continue working for her supporters' votes, kind of like she did in the speech that she delivered on her way out of the race, Kaylee. Not a lot new here, other than the fact that she herself will be voting for Donald Trump. He has already mentioned, by the way, that she is not in contention for vice president on his ticket.
He has indeed. But of course, we've all been waiting to hear from Nikki Haley. The question of whether or not she ultimately would come out for Trump in this cycle was one we're all still left with, at least until this evening. So we want to get reaction to this news now and bring in Bloomberg senior editor Wendy Benjaminson. So, Wendy, this is not an outright endorsement. She isn't exactly encouraging anyone else to vote for Donald Trump here, just saying she will do so. But still, she didn't need to say this out loud.
No, she didn't need to say it out loud at all, unless she wanted to be viable in the Republican Party in the future. If the Trump milieu still holds, if he loses in November or he's done with his presidency in 28. It's very surprising, though, because in debate after debate after debate during the Republican primaries last year and early this year, all you heard from Nikki Haley was, I was his UN ambassador. I'm telling you he's dangerous. It's a dangerous world out there. We can't have a man like that in the White House. And now she's going to vote for him. So it's clearly political calculation at its best.
It just reminds me of the day you were with us at this table, Wendy, when Mitch McConnell announced his intention to step down as Republican leader in the Senate. And the line you delivered that day was, the transformation is complete.
Yes,
this is further evidence of
this? This is absolutely further evidence of that. I mean, we've seen what happened to Liz Cheney, who maintained her position that Donald Trump was dangerous and was chairwoman of the January 6th committee and led that investigation. And she is effectively canceled by her own party, just by, her family heritage as true Republicans and all of that. So that's what, so she's literally out in the wilderness in Wyoming, and Nikki Haley obviously still wants to be part of the game, and this is what it takes. It's remarkable.
Okay, so she'll be voting for Donald Trump, but according to Bloomberg's latest polling done with Morning Consult, a lot of voters in the 7 swing states that are going to decide this election are still polling for him as well. He is leading across those 7 states by 4 points against Biden in a general election matchup. When you look, though, beneath the surface at what exactly is happening in each of these individual states, potentially there is some more positive news for the president here?
Right, absolutely. If the Biden campaign looks a little deeper into the poll, they'll see some good news, which is that the race has tightened since last month. Trump was leading by 6 points in our April poll. He is now leading by 4 points. And what the poll showed is that we have a question that asks, have you seen, read, or heard anything about Donald Trump, Joe Biden, other people? And on Donald Trump, 65% said they had seen negative news about him recently. And when we dug into what negative news they saw, it was about the trial. So the coverage of the trial relating to how he handled hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, that trial has had an impact, we believe, on the race, making people feel a little more squishy about voting for Trump. However, he has not been convicted or acquitted yet. We're really looking forward to see how people feel after the result of the trial.
The question of violence made a lot of news in this poll today, and a lot of people are talking about this in political circles. Wendy, you saw it coming. You told us this was going to be part of our research. Half of swing state voters fear violence around this election, but remarkably equal parts Democratic and Republican.
Right, and it's sort of a sad state of American politics right now where violence can plausibly be part of it. I mean, I think all of us can remember a time when that was impossible. That happened in other countries. That wouldn't happen in the United States. Yeah. And now we have half of the electorate saying that there could be. And they have been sort of normalized to it because as the campaigns were heating up in 2020, when we were most of us were locked in our homes, George Floyd was killed by the police in Minnesota, and there were a lot of social justice protests around that. There's social justice protests this summer over Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. And then on top of that, there was the horrors of January 6th. And so people are starting to feel like it isn't out of the realm of possibility anymore. The interesting thing was that they feared violence more than misinformation on social media or foreign interference.
Remarkable.
So, yeah.
This is really worth your read on the terminal and online. Our latest Bloomberg swing state poll. Wendy Benjaminson, we thank you. Our new poll also shines light on what swing state voters think about AI. And guess what? We see Democrats and Republicans agreeing again in their fear. As we bring in Bloomberg's Michael Shepard for more on this. Michael, amazing. Swing state voters worry AI will limit privacy in their lives and maybe even replace them at work. This is another area where D's and R's agree.
It is. And interestingly, in talking about the violence question in the election, we're seeing the broader issue of insecurity, the insecurity that's afflicting the American electorate as we're heading into the election cycle. They're worried about privacy. They're worried that in terms of the poll, we also found that there was a majority who supported the ban on TikTok. And of the people surveyed, 66% said they were worried that the app would allow foreign data collection, privacy, and also allow foreign manipulation of information here in the U.S. Now, what that tells us is that people have this unease, this sense of insecurity, but it also applies to employment, as you said, Joe. And this will translate somehow into votes in November, and we're going to have to see what happens there.
What's remarkable is that people may be so hesitant around this technology, or at least concerned about what it will mean for their lives, and yet the demand clearly is incredibly strong. And we see that evidence by NVIDIA, which reported just about an hour ago after the bell, blow it out of the water in terms of not just the report, but the forecast, suggesting there is really strong demand for these AI chips. So people fear it, but they can't necessarily stop the freight train from coming.
They can't get enough of it, Kaylee. The companies, the industry, people have an interest in technology, in using technology, both at a personal level, on a business level. AI has this promise to transform the economy globally. We're seeing geopolitical competition between China and the U.S., and then all the rest of the other major economies around the world trying to get a piece of the action. And NVIDIA's results really point to that. Our forecast had been $26.8 billion in revenue for the coming quarter. NVIDIA is saying $28 billion. They're doing a 10-for-1 stock split, and they are now the third most valuable stock in the S&P 500 by market cap. So it really is an extraordinary sign of how AI is here to stay, and this wave is going to keep building.
Just a remarkable story. The stock is moving ever closer to $1,000, and now there's another stock split. To your point, Michael, it's really amazing. When we back off of this, though, and think about everything that we just discussed with Michael and with Wendy about this poll, this will be the fear-driven presidential election on both sides.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe. We're seeing this level of uncertainty heading into the conventions. And, of course, those of us who are old enough to have a memory of 1968 and everything that happened there, it is a sense of unease. But it transcends generations. We did find that among older voters surveyed, there was more uncertainty about AI and what it would do, and definitely more resistance to TikTok as well.
Wow.
All All right, Bloomberg's Michael Shepard, thank you so much. We're going to have much more coming up this hour, including a look at what's happening as we speak on the House floor. An important crypto vote is coming up, but something else happened on the House floor earlier today, Joe, which is pretty remarkable, and we shouldn't go without noting, which is that Congressman Jim McGovern, a Democrat, basically was laying out the various legal problems of Donald Trump, specific crimes that he is charged with, and I believe we can play a little bit of that sound.
The candidate for President of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He's also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He's also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet, in this Republican-controlled House, it's okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham.
You take down his words.
It's okay to say the jury is rigged.
Mr. Speaker, I demand that his words be taken down.
It's okay to say the court is corrupt.
Gentleman will suspend.
But not.
And those words, in fact, were taken down. They were stricken from the record. And we want to bring Wendy Benjaminson back in on this because, Wendy, all I heard there is fact. He is charged with those crimes.
He could be reading from public documents, from public court documents. And we have heard Republicans in the House or the Senate say much worse things, that there are opinions about Joe Biden. All this Congressman McGovern was doing was, as you said, reading the charges that were there. And the remarkable contrast when you saw this Trump's entourage outside the courthouse, where he has legions of Republican lawmakers, including the House Speaker, talking about what a sham the trial is and, handling the comments that Trump is prohibited from making because of a gag order, it's just a remarkable moment of one-sidism, I guess is the way to call it.
Yeah, certainly something to see happening on the House floor today, and we'll have more on it with our political panel later this hour. Wendy Benjaminson, thank you so much. But coming up next, we'll talk more about that crypto bill I was referring to that the House is going to be voting on the FIT for the 21st Century Act, market structure. We'll discuss it more with Kristin Smith, CEO of the Blockchain Association, next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio.
If you're looking for good examples of bipartisan cooperation, our work in the House Financial Services Committee on digital assets is just that. This bill, the FIT for the 21st Century Act, the first ever, regulatory structure for digital assets, is coming to the floor for a vote next week.
It's time to bring our financial system into the 21st century. What the FIT bill is essentially start to lay out those ground rules, the playing field, so that people who innovate in the digital space, people who are creating the next great internet, are able to do that here in this country.
That was Congressman Wiley Nickel, the Democrat from North Carolina, and the House Whip, Majority Whip, that is, Tom Emmer, Republican from Minnesota, sharing their thoughts on the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act that's hitting the House floor this evening, a crypto market structure bill that divides authority between the CFTC and the SEC. The SEC's chair, Gary Gensler, as well as the White House, have come out in opposition to this legislation. And joining us now to discuss it further is Kristin Smith, CEO of the Blockchain Association, who is here with us in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thank you so much, Kristin, for joining us here on Balance of Power. Tom Emmer told us earlier this week he is confident that this does have the votes to pass in the House tonight. But if the SEC is out against it and the White House is out against it, does it stand a real chance in the Senate?
Well, I think the Senate is another conversation. I think the one thing we do know is we are expecting a strong bipartisan vote in the House on the FIT21 bill. And I think that vote is symbolic because it shows that, one, both parties are willing to come together to work on this legislation. But two, it shows that Congress is the one that should be making the policy. The SEC doesn't have the authority today. We need to give the appropriate agencies the authority. We need Congress to do their job. So we're incredibly excited by this vote, and focus on the vote today, and then we'll work on making changes to the bill and evolving the bill when it gets over to the Senate.
You going to throw a party for Gary Gensler when this passes?
There is a party tonight that we're going to pass for the celebration of this bill, absolutely. But yeah, listen, I think that policymaking takes time. It takes a lot of education. This is a very complicated space. And the fact that we are here today having, the full House of Representatives vote on a comprehensive crypto bill, huge milestone. We're very excited in the industry about this moment.
Certainly, it's something that the outgoing Financial Services Chair, Patrick McHenry, has long been pushing for, but he is not seeking re-election. He'll be out come the new Congress. So if it can't get across the finish line in this congressional session, if it can't be tweaked enough in the Senate to actually pass, do we have to start entirely fresh on this issue come January 2025?
Yes, we would have to start over. But quite frankly, I think that's a good thing. I think, when this bill was originally crafted, we were coming off of the FTX collapse, and there are some very complicated pieces to this bill. I think as we look to next Congress, we have so many members of Congress today that know more about this than 2 years ago when this process started. And I think we have a lot of candidates right now who are running in both the House and the Senate, and even the White House, that are open-minded towards crypto policy and learning about this space. So I think the set of policymakers that we're going to have in place on Capitol Hill next Congress are going to be even more educated than this Congress. Okay. So it's not the end of the world if it doesn't get done this year, but we're certainly excited that it's gotten to this milestone. I think this shows how mature the crypto industry has come when it comes to engaging with lawmakers. And I think there's also now a recognition that so many people across the country own digital assets. They care about the policies that impact them. And there's a real grassroots swell of support for getting good policy done.
So this is generational, I think, is your point. You call yourselves the collective voice of the crypto industry at the Blockchain Association. Who's the voice of the crypto voter? When you think about the way this plays out at the ballot box, who is the crypto voter? Is this 18 to 24? Are these crypto bros? How does this demographic take form?
It does tend to skew younger. There was a Harris did a poll recently that showed that 1 in 5 voters are watching what cryptocurrency policy is when it comes to their candidates. So that was a very surprising number. The latest numbers we've seen is over 52 million Americans own crypto. And there actually is an organization for individuals who want to get involved called Stand With Crypto. You can go sign up, be a part of standwithcrypto.org as an individual user. Gives you tools to weigh in with your congressmen and your senators. And I know that organization has been very active in helping individuals mobilize to weigh in on
judging by Kaylee's Twitter feed, these are very involved active. That's all I know.
Well, and there is a lot of money here as well, including a trio of super PACs, including Fairshake, that have tens of millions of dollars to throw into this election cycle.
No, I think it's about $100 million that's been raised on the super PAC side. I mean, I think if you have to look from the sort of crypto industry point of view, we believe we've been treated incredibly unfairly and hostily by the regulators, particularly the SEC. And I think that the industry has decided enough is enough, and that we are going to do everything possible to get a fair chance at getting sound regulation in place that strikes a balance between protecting consumers but also fostering innovation here in the United States. And so I think that we're at the big kids table now. We've graduated, we have grown up, we are mature, and we're ready to engage.
Just on a sign of maturity, obviously it was a big moment for the industry when the SEC approved spot Bitcoin ETFs earlier this year. Our analysts here at Bloomberg Intelligence this week raised their odds of spot Ether ETF approval from 25% to 75%. It could theoretically happen as soon as tomorrow. What does it mean for the industry if it does?
I think it's really exciting. I mean, I think the fact that the SEC is considering this, I think most people, including the Bloomberg analysts, until they got this new information, had thought that the odds were very low this year. But I think the SEC is probably reading the tea leaves. They realize that it's very hard for them to continue to have this sort of hostile take towards the crypto industry, and that they really can't justify not considering these applications. And so, I don't know if it'll be this week or sometime in the next couple of weeks, but the process definitely seems to be underway. And I think it will be very important because if the SEC approves these, it really undermines the case that they're trying to make that Ether is a security. And so we think it will be very important for these to get forward. And we're encouraged by that news. Also very encouraged by the bipartisan votes we had in the House and Senate on the SAB 121 accounting rule repeal. That's been another big victory. So, yeah, we're having a moment here in crypto policy world. But it's because of all the hard work that so many people have been doing over the past several years that we're finally being taken seriously.
Well, thanks for being with us on this day of the House vote. Kristin Smith with us at the big kids table today on Balance of Power. Appreciate the time. Changing gears to international news, we've had a lot today. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called for a surprise election this summer.
Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future, to decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty. Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
Yes, he said the 4th of July, standing in the rain in front of number 10 Downing. For more on what this decision means, we're joined by Joe Twyman, founder and CEO of Deltapoll. Joe, it's great to see you. Why did the Prime Minister think earlier was better?
Well, many people are asking that precise question. In this country, it is the choice of the Prime Minister when the general election is held within a 5-year band. And generally speaking, you hold the election because you think things are not going to get any better. And that seems to be the expectation for Rishi Sunak. He believes that now is the time to call the election because over the summer and particularly going into the autumn, things may deteriorate, whether it's the economic situation or the situation we have with immigration or the National Health Service, all of which are important issues. And the election had to be held before the 28th of January, and he didn't want to leave it too long and look desperate. And so the 4th of July is the date.
Yeah, U.S. Independence Day, which I think we might find more interesting on this side of the pond. But, Joe, you just talked about how the economy is a factor here. And I have to wonder, doing this in July doesn't leave the room for, say, another fiscal event that might have been there if it were later this fall. But the Chancellor of the Exchequer could have done something else in regard to taxes, maybe juice the economy a little bit more. Could that prove to be a mistake if that is featuring highly on the minds of voters?
It certainly could. The cost of living is the most important issue when you ask people what's facing them and their families, or indeed the country as a whole. And it was expected that there would be something offered to the public before the election took place. But now it's not going to be possible, even for the Bank of England to lower interest rates in light of positive news we had on inflation just yesterday. And so it really is a big gamble on all fronts, but particularly on the economy. And though the Prime Minister in his speech today talked about how the economic situation was improving, the data shows that the general public clearly need convincing on that. Only around a quarter of people expect the economy to get better in the next 12 months. And indeed, 6 in 10 say it's got worse over the last 12 months. That's not a situation anyone wants to be going into as a government going into an election.
Well, Joe, we're hearing the Scots are pretty angry about this. I guess that's the first week of Scottish school holiday. What are you hearing about this?
Yes, that's right. The Scottish state schools have holidays as then, and the rest of England and Wales will have holidays from mid-July onwards, and so it will cause disruption for campaigning in Scotland, and particularly around schools which are often used as polling stations in Scotland. So there could be if you like, a logistical impact on that as well. But I doubt it will have a significant impact on the actual result. But we should wait and see.
And finally, Joe, as we await the actual result, sitting here in the United States, obviously we talk a lot about what a President Biden or President Trump would mean for our relationships abroad. What does a Prime Minister Rishi Sunak versus a Prime Minister Keir Starmer mean for relationships like that? Does it change anything in terms of the U.S.-UK relationship?
Well, I think that both the Conservative Party and particularly the Labour Party are more closely aligned to the Democrats of Joe Biden than they are to the Republicans of Donald Trump. But as what we regard as our closest international ally, either Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer will work, I'm sure, with whoever is elected into the White House in November.
And I'm sure that's what they would tell us as well. Joe Twyman, thank you so much for joining us here in Balance of Power. We appreciate your time. Now, coming up, we'll take a closer look at the meeting happening between the tech executives and Kenya's President Ruto at the White House today. Shirley Martey Hargis, Senior China Policy Fellow from the Third Way, joins us next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio. President Biden is hosting Kenyan President William Ruto for an official state visit this week. It marks 60 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries as the White House tries to deepen ties through the private sector. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall has more from the White House. Tyler?
Hey, Kaylee. President Biden invited executives from both the U.S. and Kenyan-based companies to the White House today. That includes the CFO of Google's parent company, Alphabet. This is part of a broader push for more strategic investment in Kenya. President Biden addressed this just moments ago, highlighting a renewed partnership between Silicon Valley and what's being called the Silicon Savannah.
We're launching a new era of technological cooperation between Kenya and America, including new exchanges and investments in key fields of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and semiconductors.
It's a welcome sentiment for Kenyan President William Ruto, who also visited Capitol Hill today and met with House Speaker Mike Johnson, where he told him that economic issues would be a key part of this visit.
The economy is a big space. We will be discussing how we can build on investment, on trade, on business.
This is part of a broader backdrop of competition throughout Africa.
All right, Tyler, thank you. We had a little trouble with Tyler's line from the White House, and we do appreciate the reporting, Tyler, on an important state visit. The conversation we now extend with Shirley Martey Hargis, Senior China Policy Fellow at Third Way. Shirley, it's great to see you at the table. Our audience said, I thought you were talking about Kenya. Why do you have a China expert at the table?
Oh.
That was
Why am I here?
That was by design. Would this be happening today if it were not for China's influence on the global south, Belt and Road in countries like Kenya?
I was at the welcoming ceremony for the president from Kenya this morning, and I think Africa recognizes that China, or rather I would say China recognizes that Africa is the foundation for our semiconductor industry globally. China recognizes that supply chains are coming to the continent. China recognizes that the anchor for our energy transition is also on the continent. So these are, much to your point, Joe, when you said that, is this part of the reason why? I would say yes.
Okay, so you just said China recognizes all of these things. And certainly you see dollars behind that recognition through Belt and Road and otherwise. What Tyler had some great graphics that essentially were showing foreign direct investment into not just Kenya, but Africa, the African continent as a whole. Far exceeds the foreign direct investment we're seeing from the U.S. Does the U.S. recognize these same things to the extent that it needs to?
I think that what I think is fascinating about the Biden administration is that it is clearly trying to reinstall trust with the African continent. However, there's been so many years of a checkered past, checkered investment from the U.S. on the continent, and many of these countries know that. And so, you know, in the U.S. we have, 4.3, we have millions of Africans here in this country. My parents emigrated here decades ago. We're from Ghana. And I was born and raised here, but I see there's so many Africans here that are contributing to this economy and filling in the shortages in the healthcare industry, in the transportation industry, and so many STEM-related Africans that come here. And the continent is not waiting, but China and Russia, for better or for worse, do recognize Africa's geopolitical heft.
Yeah.
The U.S., that's to be determined.
To be determined with visits like this. When we look at Belt and Road and the investments made in a country like Kenya, millions invested, but a country left deep in debt because of it. It's partly why they're turning to the U.S. with our invitation in this case. Is Belt and Road a failure in Africa?
I think the earlier African countries that were that China started with this Belt and Road initiative, including Kenya, they are one of the first, especially Kenya, one of the first countries to really push against China. Right now, though, China is now sharpshooting a bit. They're looking at the ICT areas in Africa. And again, you have a youthful entrepreneurial spirit. Most of the world will be African in just a couple years. 90 million African households will be coming into the consumer class in 2025. And so China knows with its FDI challenges and its other economic challenges, they have to be strategic. And so they're looking specifically at targeting those ICT locations in Africa and putting the loans there. They're not just throwing money at the continent anymore, but they're being strategic. And we have to have presence there because American businesses can benefit significantly, and it can be a win-win situation, which is not what China or Russia are providing. That's the gap.
Well, it's so interesting to hear you talk about strategic competition, essentially, in that China is recognizing all of these different strategic threats or opportunities, whatever they may be. The U.S. talks a lot about the strategic competition with China. We have a whole House committee dedicated to it, but a lot of that focuses on our actual trade relationship with China, on imports and exports, on putting in place restrictions into what can go into China. Does it focus enough strategically on everywhere else, including Africa, but other places that China is having influence that we also should be factoring into our policies?
Well, this is, I suppose, where the China stuff comes in and why I'm here. Yes, China does. You know, a lot of folks will say China's authoritarian government, its model, is really very rigid, and it is. However, they're willing to try things. They're in Kenya, they're in Tanzania, they're in many countries on the African continent. They are in the Arctic. They're all over the world. And they're willing to try things where we tend to think in a binary way. For example, now we have the Kenyan president here, and there's so many countries that are waiting for our president to go to the continent. And for better or for worse, he's good at meeting with these nation leaders. And so it's so historical what we're doing right now with President Ruto. However, China, we tend to focus a lot on China, and its strategic benefit is they're able to find opportunities all over where we're a bit more risk adverse, and understandably so. Even African countries, they're not perfect either. It's as though I will say, we tend to tell a lot of countries, these African countries especially, that we're telling you what you want, whereas China is good at saying, what do you want? And that's not always a good question to ask. There's a lot of pros and cons to that. But this is what you get with the U.S. This is what you get with China. It's a challenge on both ends. It really is.
Much has been said on this visit about a promise unkept by this president to visit Africa. I believe it was in his first year, he said. He's the first Democratic president to not visit the continent since Lyndon Johnson, which is a fact that jumped off the page for me this morning. Today, he made reference that he would like to go if he's reelected. He might go shortly after the election in that world. What would President Xi make of that?
President Xi would do what he often does, which is remind many of these places that the U.S. hasn't been consistent with you all, but we've shown up. We have multiple summits with you all. We always show up. And I think it seems like a big hill. It seems like it's too late for us. It's not. It's not. However, if we say we're going to go to Africa, we have to go. Because, like you said, Lyndon Johnson, that's a long time. That's a long time. And just building the consistency. It's great that Blinken and Vice President Harris are going to the continent, but state leaders need to see each other. It needs to be state-to-state leader. And it seems minor, but it shows respect.
Okay, so consistency is key, and you got to keep the promises. Shirley Martey Hargis, thank you so much for joining us in our Washington, D.C. studio. We appreciate your time. And coming up next, we'll be joined by our political panel to discuss the new Bloomberg Morning Consult poll and how the numbers are looking for both President Biden and former President Donald Trump. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
I'm not sure that either candidate should be smiling at this point. These are very close contests across the swing state map. Now, the one thing that might make the president smile a bit is the fact that since the winter, he has seen his support improve a bit as voters have come off the sidelines. But look, I mean, he's still underwater in most of these states.
That was Eli Yokley with Morning Consult, a political analyst, talking with us earlier. On this polling day at Bloomberg, the new Bloomberg swing state poll is out, and we work with Morning Consult on this, finding some fascinating data that we've been sharing with you over the course of the day. And if this election were held today, as we've seen, the aggregate across the 7 swing states would mean a win for Donald Trump. Let's assemble our political panel. Brittany Martinez, Republican strategist, founder of Espina and Company, and Jeanne Zaino, Iona University political science professor, senior democracy fellow with the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. It's great to see you both. Thank you for joining. Jeanne, people are celebrating the blue wall numbers for Joe Biden in this case. This is not a slam dunk for him. He's actually not leading in all of them. They're each within 1 or 2 points here. Should he be celebrating these numbers, knowing that Donald Trump has been locked in a courtroom for the balance of this poll?
In a word, no, absolutely not. You know, I usually celebrate every month when the Bloomberg Morning Consult poll comes out. But lately, if you are on the Democratic side, it's not much to celebrate about. And while Eli is right, the numbers look a tad bit better. This is the most optimistic way to say it for Joe Biden. They are pretty dismal. And this is why we saw the president not that long ago try to shake up the race with the debates. There's got to be a lot more shaking of this race for him to feel comfortable or to celebrate anything at this point.
So let's talk about Donald Trump and how he may be viewing these numbers, Brittany, because while, sure, there might not be too much to celebrate for Biden, arguably Biden is closing the gap here in a number of these very key states. And according to what we got the respondents in this poll, more than 1,000 of them alluded to the fact that they had seen coverage of Trump's court case recently. And it raises the question of to what extent that is formulating an opinion about him and potentially leading to what we have seen as a narrowing in a number of instances. And we haven't even gotten acquittal or conviction yet. How concerning should that be for the Trump campaign?
And it's only May, too. I think it should be very concerning. We all know here that the MAGA voters are always going to be the MAGA voters, and there's nothing that Trump can do that's going to dissuade them. But I was looking at a poll the other day, and about 26% don't know how they feel about this trial. And so if they want to be able to close the gap or grow the gap, I guess I should say, and get additional voters, that is a huge concern. I think Americans have voter fatigue right now. I think they're tired of this and the chaos and all of the, charges. And so I don't think it helps his case at all.
One of the takeaways here, beyond the horse race, half of swing state voters think they should be worried about violence surrounding this election. And it's not even just the day after, Kayleigh, surrounding the election. That could include the conventions. We've heard a lot of talk about the potential for violence in Chicago. Jeanne, you're a pollster. When you see Democrats and Republicans in equal measure worried about something like this, what does it tell you?
You know, it says that the public is reflecting what we've known. There is a lot of insecurity out there, and I don't think they feel like either candidate or, quite frankly, leadership in the United States overall for a long time has been able to put them at ease. I mean, these are people, all of us, who have lived through a pandemic, January 6th, the George Floyd protests, campus protests. I mean, the list goes on and on. So people feel like they can't feel safe in their house and home and in their neighborhood. And they want leadership to address that. And they feel like the election, unfortunately, is only going to exacerbate this and make things worse. We all hope that's not the case, but they are reflecting a very real concern. And they're doing it, you know, this poll comes out today. Well, just 24 hours ago, we had Donald Trump's campaign with a video of 30 seconds up for 18 hours with Nazi propaganda in it. I mean, how can you expect people to feel safe and secure in this country and in this election if you've got somebody channeling things like that and then blaming it on a poor staffer? And it's not the first time, it's not a one-off, it's a pattern. And so this is deeply troubling, and it's troubling to both sides.
Well, especially as we consider not just the protests that we have seen in recent months on college campuses, the George Floyd protests in the aftermath of his death have been recollected today as well as we assess this data, but of course January 6th as well. And Brittany, you worked for former Speaker Kevin McCarthy for a very long time. You spent a lot of time on the Hill, I'm sure in the days just before, after, if not on, January 6th of 2021. Given what happened that day, what we proved that Americans are capable of doing, do voters have any real reason to believe that we shouldn't or won't see something like that happen again?
I think that this poll makes so much sense. Of course they'd feel that way. Of course they'd feel like there'd be violence or threatened about democracy and the institution that we have. We saw it on January 6th, right? And not to mention, you know, now House Republican members like Lee Stefanik are calling them hostages. So the narrative has completely changed, but the voters don't feel that way. The voters still are reeling from the trauma of that day. It was a blemish on our institution and democracy. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that that's the way that the Republican Party has decided to go.
All right, Brittany and Jeanne are going to stay with us because coming up, we have to talk about Democratic Congressman Jim McGovern, who had his words about Donald Trump and his ongoing legal issues stricken from the record on the House floor today. We'll get reaction from this political panel next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Candidate for President of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He's also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He's also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet, in this Republican-controlled House, it's okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham.
He take down his words.
It's okay to say the jury is rigged.
Mr. Speaker, I demand that his words be taken down.
It's okay to say the court is corrupt.
Gentleman will suspend.
But not.
That was Democratic Congressman Jim McGovern on the floor of the House earlier, and those words were, in fact, taken down from the record. Back with us now is Brittany Martinez, Republican strategist and founder of Espina and Company, and Jeanne Zaino, Iona University political science professor and senior democracy fellow with the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. So, Brittany, I'm not sure that this would have gone down much differently under former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who you worked for, than it did under the speakership of Mike Johnson. But to take down words that essentially were just a listing of actual crimes that Donald Trump has been charged with, what does that say about where we are in this House of Representatives right now?
I mean, we're completely divided. We have been for a long time. I think we have been for a few years. I think it's interesting. I think McGovern made an excellent point. You know, he said that Republicans all the time are able to talk about this trial and call it a sham. But when he brings up actual facts, then they want to, you know, strike his words down. The only thing that I will say is that in the House, when you're going to give a speech on the floor, you're not allowed to call members by their name directly. So perhaps that's a way that House Republicans here are going to go about it. But ultimately, he was just telling, you know, what the news is reporting.
This brought business on the floor to a halt for about an hour here, Jeanne. The fact of the matter strikes me that if nothing was said about this, it probably wouldn't have made any news, and nobody would have heard what Mr. McGovern said. The Democrat from Massachusetts has been known to be a bit of a flamethrower. I feel like I've heard him say more controversial things about Donald Trump, to be perfectly honest with you, and the Republican Party at large on the floor. But now he can go raise money on this, right? This is the cycle. This is how this goes.
It is. You know, I agree. It sounded pretty benign, this litany of facts about these charges against Donald Trump. I don't know if you guys felt this, but I'm listening to this, you know, the other day with Marjorie Taylor Greene and the eyelashes. Then you listen to this and people are screaming, strike it from the record. And I'm thinking, we're at 2024. What's striking it from the record do now that it's been all over social media, all over C-SPAN? What they're doing, but it just seems so counterproductive at this point. You know, maybe in 1800 that made some sense, but not now. It is just stunning. You know, this is a party, the Republicans, who like to talk about free speech. I understand, and Brittany's absolutely right. There are rules in the House. He didn't say anything against a member. That said, I do, worry when he says afterwards he's going to, he could keep doing it. I think he said that in jest because he got under their skin. But I really, really wish Congress would do something productive for the people. As you mentioned, Joe, an hour stalled from doing anything as a result of pretty much nothing said. It makes you wonder why anybody has faith in the Congress at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of the reasoning we hear as to why things are so hard to get done in Congress is because we're working with really slim margins in the House. It's been one vote, Brittany. It's now going to be 2 votes because your former boss's seat got filled last night by Vince Vaughn.
Right.
But now that we're this deep into an election year, what does one extra vote actually matter? Because how much are they going to be voting on?
Not much, I would say, at all. Vince Vaughn, I know him from my time working in Speaker McCarthy's office. He's a great guy. I think he's going to do wonderful things for the district. But the majority is so slim, and whether it's 1 vote or 2 votes, I think that we're going to continue to be stalled and not get much accomplished. We haven't so far, and it's an election year. It's a presidential election year, so I don't think we'll see much more coming out the floor.
What's Kevin McCarthy going to be doing in the next couple of years? What's his plan? When's he coming back to Washington?
I hope celebrating life and living it to the fullest
well, you can't
with
do that
his
in
family
Washington.
and friends. Definitely not in Washington.
Brittany, it's great to have you at the table. Brittany Martinez, as we add more voices to our circle here on Balance of Power. And, of course, the great Jeanne Zaino. Thanks, Jeanne, as always. Check out the Washington Edition newsletter. If you want to follow up on the stories that we've been talking about today, it's all there, along with many of the interviews that you may have seen or heard today. Find it on the terminal and online.
Thanks so much for joining us on Balance of Power. Joe will be back here tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
I got a vacation to take, but I'll see you next week, Joe. Have a good night, everyone. This is Bloomberg TV and Radio.